Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming out nice and bright and early, although it seems very, very active here already this morning. It's great. As Chris mentioned, my name is Katie Sell, and I'm currently working up at Hofstra University in New York. But I kind of was asked to present here on this particular topic, career paths in TSAC, given my involvement with the TSAC community for quite a few years now. For those of you, well, just raise your hands here real quick. How many of you guys have heard of TSAC before? Okay, good. So we've got a good kind of reach out there. A couple of you didn't raise your hands. So just real quick, TSAC is Tactical Strength and Conditioning. So we're talking about here strength and conditioning or physical training professionals working with tactical pops, fire and rescue, law enforcement, and military, and all the different disciplines that fall under those particular populations. So it's quite a big field. Now, as you heard from Chris, my kind of avenue is with wildland firefighters. And so what I really wanted to do today is kind of share with you how I got into this particular field and give you some kind of case studies, some examples of how others also fell into these positions working with strength and conditioning and training with all of these different groups. And then we kind of summarize a little bit what you guys can do if you are interested in working with these groups, strength and conditioning wise. So before I do get started here, I'll tell you briefly kind of how I got involved. I did my PhD at the University of Utah, go Utes, okay, down in Salt Lake City. During that time, I worked as my assistantship at the Peak Academy. And the Peak Academy itself is a wellness and training facility associated with the department. And we were actually approached by Park City Fire Department to do some annual physical fitness testing with them. Now, this is back in 2003, 2004. Okay, and for those of you familiar with firefighters, it was probably about 5 or 6 years earlier than that they really first came out with their big wellness initiative, the WFI. So it slowly had been implemented within departments if they chose to adopt it. Okay, that's a big thing, guys, with this field, is they're not always required to do all physical training, okay? So it makes it a bit tricky, and I'll get onto that in a second. But these guys approached us. They wanted to have fitness testing done every year. Every firefighter was required right around their birthday to come into the Peak Academy and get a comprehensive physical fitness evaluation done. Okay, so I got to learn very, very quickly about the community. And part of why this was quite progressive for them is because they had recently administered a policy that for every day the firefighter was on duty, they had to do an hour of physical fitness training. Okay, now that sounds great, right? An hour of training every day you're on work. Awesome. Okay, they should stay well fit. But they had actually had to implement a secondary policy saying things like, you can only do stretching for 10 minutes of that hour. Because what they were finding guys doing is stretching for 50 minutes and then playing basketball for 10. Okay? So if you kind of think about this, part of why they got us doing the fitness assessments was to help encourage, maybe promote this idea that being physically fit is going to be very good for you. Okay? It's going to help you cope with the stresses the job is placing upon you. So I got to work with these guys. Well, you guys heard the term networking before, right? And how important that is? Another colleague of mine who was also doing her PhD at the time, but in sports psychology, her brother worked for another fire department up in Ogden. She told him what we were doing. He approached his captain. He approached me, and we got doing some fitness testing and training with those guys in just a little bit north of Salt Lake City. So one thing led to another. I did my PhD dissertation, okay, with those guys, validating minimal fitness standards. Okay, so great. Graduated my PhD, I moved to New York because that's where a great job was, running the program there. So I wanted to carry on doing my research with these guys. And as part of that professional development, I attended a Perform Better conference. You guys all heard Perform Better, right? You guys like booth here. And a gentleman speaking at that conference was the one and only Mark Stevenson. Okay, if any of you guys have met Mark, he was a great advocate for the TSAC program. He was the first TSAC program coordinator here. He did a quick 20-minute presentation on the TSAC program, really starting. This is back in 2006, early 2007, somewhere like that. And to be really honest with you, I only went to the conference because it was in Rhode Island. I'm a huge tennis fan, and that was close to the International Hall of Fame tennis. I really wanted to go and see that, so I went to the conference to do that. But it turned out to be one of the best things I could do, because I approached Mark afterwards and said, well, I've done some work with fire. Can I help? And from then, he's like, we don't have anyone with fire, come on in, okay? And so for 7 years now, I've helped be the fire go-to person with TSAC. So that networking, absolutely huge. And you'll see that come up big time in the next slides that we're looking at here. So what I wanted to do for you guys today, rather than just stand up here and tell you, network, get experience, do internships, do this, this, and this, we all know those things. I wanted to actually present with you today a few case studies of folks similar to myself, as well as other practitioners in the field, how they got into TSAC, okay? How they got into doing strength and conditioning with tactical populations. We know professional development is very, very important for a strength and conditioning coach, and we know from the research that there is many, many opportunities or ways that we can really enhance our own professional development. Little list up here, degrees, education, certifications, nothing new, right? You guys all know this. Getting your certs down. Now, we know certifications don't make a coach, okay? We know that just because you have your CSCS doesn't mean you are going to be the world's best strength and conditioning coach, but it does mean that you've taken the time to get the foundational knowledge kind of secured up here. Okay, and that's a good thing. So getting those certs really, really is important. Okay, and if you don't kind of appreciate how important that is, just look at the recent news. The NCAA has made it mandatory for all Division I, Division II coaches who are working within the NCAA sports. They have to have either the CSCS or the CSCCA as of July next year. Okay, so pretty important there. But we've also got networking and conferences, which obviously you guys know professional development, how important it is, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here attending this conference right now, okay? So the reason I bring this up is this is no different for somebody looking to go into the field of TSAC. Okay, if you are looking to do strength and conditioning with military, law enforcement, fire, then you do need to have this background. Okay, you do need to get your certifications. You do need to think about continuing education and education period. However, when it comes to working with tactical populations, you also need to really, really take the time to know your population, okay? You've got to get to know them. Similar concept, if you're a strength coach perhaps at the collegiate level, you need to know what teams you're working with. Okay, if you've only ever worked, for example, with baseball, and you've been asked to now work with ice hockey or tennis, you're gonna have to get to know that sport. You're gonna have to get to know what the movement patterns are in that sport, what the injury risk is. But you also need to get to know what the mentality of that team is. And this is absolutely imperative with tactical populations, absolutely imperative. That last comment right down the bottom there, psychological and emotional components of being in the military, law enforcement, and fire. We need to think about not just what their physical demands are, but what other stresses they may be experiencing that would impact their ability to train and also maintain their fitness level. They're going to be, a lot of them are going to be on shift work, for example. Okay, so they may have 24 or 48 hours on. Okay, then they may have 24, 48 hours off, and that's just a very blasé kind of example there. But they have to be alert, possibly, during that time. They may not get some sleep during that 24-hour period, but you may have to train them that day. Okay, well, getting them to do a nice high-intensity training program, which may develop the power and the speed they need for their job, might not be appropriate for that particular day when they've had a hard day on shift. Okay, so I recently went to a really great presentation by a good friend of mine, John Hoffman, who you'll see him up here in a moment, made a great point about the type of training you might do if they're coming to you already stressed. We might do a circuit training approach, for example, as opposed to kind of a multi-joint heavy lifting day, because we don't evoke the same cortisol response if we do circuit training. They've already got elevated cortisol and stress hormones going around their body, okay? We also need to know about their risk for health-related issues. Okay, within the fire service, the biggest on-duty reason for death is heart attacks. Okay, well, we know heart attacks can maybe not be preventable, but we can definitely decrease the risk of that, right? Okay, so you need to get to know the population that you're working with and being very humble in that manner also when you approach them. I learned very, very quickly, and thankfully by not making any mistakes in doing this, that I couldn't go into a fire department and say, I'm going to come in and help improve your physical fitness so you can do your job better. Oh my God, that's the ultimate insult. Okay, absolutely, they can do their job absolutely fine. Okay, absolutely fine. Me coming in as a non-firefighter, and oftentimes as a female too, okay, because it tends to be a little bit more of a male-dominated profession. coming in doing that, I can't come in and do that if I want to have their respect and have them work with me in improving their fitness level. So I tend to go in more with the approach that I can help you cope better with the stresses the job places upon you by helping you maintain and possibly improve that fitness a little bit. So we've got to think about what we're saying. But bearing that in mind, okay, with these groups, it's not so much win and loss for these groups. It's more win and loss for these guys is potentially life and death. Okay, so I kind of bring this example up here. It's quite a cute little cartoon anyway, so I just like sharing it with as many people as possible. But we need to think about a comprehensive fitness program with these guys. Oftentimes, especially with fire and law, you might be looking more at a wellness program that physical fitness is part of. So you need to know all of these things about your population. What are their health risks? What are their injury risks? So you can develop a really comprehensive and applicable training program. So this may also actually involve you working with other professionals in the field too. Okay, we might be working with the health practitioner. We might be working with the physician that's actually associated with that given department. Okay, so that's some other kind of considerations there. And you'll see with some of the case studies I bring up how different individuals have really networked both before and on the job to develop their own professional capabilities in this manner. Okay, so with that in mind, there are a lot of different job opportunities out there for working within tactical populations. Some of those are stated a little bit more obviously, and some of those folks may actually have to seek out or make for themselves. But just to give you a little insight here, I'm not going to go through each of these websites up on the board, but you've got them hopefully on your notes. And if you don't have your notes or anything, I'm more than happy to email these through to you. These are some of the common sites where you can actually find job postings related to strength and conditioning or physical training positions within tactical populations there. Okay, so the top one right there, I will point out, Exos is actually here at the conference. They are, I think, just around the corner from me. Okay, they used to be Athletes Performance, I think, EOS. Yeah, it's Athletes Performance, right? And so they're very good at training up folks to work with special forces in the military and so forth, okay? So a lot of great sites there. I will kind of put the little disclaimer at the bottom. The majority of these are pertaining to working with military disciplines, okay? And I'll talk a little bit about fire and law enforcement in a second. Okay, so let's have a little look at some case studies. I always find it a really good thing to look at how different folks got into their positions. What did they actually have to do? What did they find themselves doing? Was it a case of them being in the right place at the right time? Or did they actively seek out opportunities here? I personally am not a big believer in luck. I think you put yourself in the right place at the right time. So if you can kind of be active there, it's a really good thing. And the first example I've got here for you guys is a gentleman I spoke about earlier, John Hoffman. He is a fitness coordinator over in Sacramento. He's been there for, I think it's 2006, so about 5-6 years now. And take a little look at his resume here, folks. Take a little look. He started out, actually, his undergrad was in economics, believe it or not. But while he was studying economics, he was also developing himself as a very, very elite level athlete. So he was actually an Olympic standard kayaker. So that particular experience there, you're going to see this come up quite a bit, guys. If you're interested in working in tactical pops, it really helps for you to be working out yourself. Hopefully that's kind of a no-brainer one there, okay? But you'll see that a lot. And part of what kind of got him interested in working with tactical populations was the fact that as a strength coach, okay, through his personal training experience, working at Velocity Sports, he really got a very, very good understanding of what it takes to be a successful athlete, both physically as well as mentally, kind of the psychology of doing it. And in talking with him, he mentioned that his coach, when he was first training for the 2004 Olympics, said to him, if I have to give you a Rudy talk, you've seen the movie Rudy? Notre Dame, yeah. If I have to give you a Rudy talk, then I'm not interested in training you anymore. You've got to be motivated to kind of do this training. So he got a really good understanding of what it takes to be an elite level athlete and be highly conditioned. And as you can see here, this type of mentality led him to pursue jobs. Okay, so not only did he get his education, but he got jobs as a personal trainer and also at Velocity Sports, where he learned how to work with groups of individuals. And those of you who do strength and conditioning right now, you know there's a big difference between personal training and then training with large groups. Totally different mentality, management style, all of that stuff, okay, comes into play there. So he also pursued a number of different certifications. So we've got USA Track, we've got USA Weightlifting, and that job forced him to also pursue his CSCS. So he's got all these certifications here. Well, 2006, he decided he's going to have another stab at going for the Olympics as a kayaker. So he actually heads off to the Australian Institute of Sport, okay? But after a short time there, realized that he maybe didn't want to pursue this, but was very interested in promoting fitness and strength and conditioning approaches in other individuals. So comes back to Sacramento, and believe it or not, on one of those lovely internet job sites, finds a position for fitness coordinator at Sacramento Fire Department. Okay, now, to understand this kind of fully, how we got there, it's important to appreciate that the program at Sacramento had actually been in place since 1989. This is 2006 for him. Wonderful gentleman, getting on a little bit in age, starting to retire. John comes in. Now, 800 people applied for this position, 800 people. He gets down to the last 5, comes on in, and does his little interview, and part of the interview has to write out a program that he would implement for a unit of firefighters. Okay, now you can get different variations of how many folks are in one department. Typically you've got different shifts going on there, but we're looking about kind of 12 or 16 firefighters here. So he's sitting in the room with 5 other people, okay, and they're all busy on their computers typing it out. He draws a graph and a table. Okay, he's done in 15 minutes. Okay, and so he's kind of sitting there for the other 45 kind of thing. Well, he gets in and the guy goes, explain your graph. He could explain it great because he's had all this experience working with groups, with individuals, different populations. He hadn't just worked with one particular sport, but a lot of different individuals. And he got the job right there and then. They called him back the next day. Okay, so his position now has evolved into many other affiliated positions too. So he runs the whole wellness program. But it took him about 3 years to get their trust and about 5 years to get their respect, is what he quoted to me. Okay, so he now is working very, very closely with these folks. But as he's often said in some of the talks, and he's actually talking later today, if any of you guys want to go and listen to him, very, very good speaker. He said that gaining kind of that respect, he now serves almost as a go-to person for any complaints or issues that they also have. So a lot of trust is there. But he also works in other affiliated positions, okay, as a result of his involvement with Sacramento. So I kind of put at each of these case studies a little quote from each of the individuals too. And this is what kind of John recommends if you are looking to become a TSAC individual working with fire. A fitness trainer working with firefighters should be seen and not heard. Okay, it is not, by the way, guys, anyone looking to get into TSAC, you rarely will get a pat on your back. Okay, you rarely will get the pat on your back, but it's extremely rewarding to work there anyway. So the overall goal is to gain their trust and respect above everything else. Without the buy-in from the firefighters, a training program will have little chance of succeeding. Although we may refer to firefighters, law enforcement, and military as tactical athletes, we can't treat them the same way that we might do collegiate athletes. Okay, so they're not required always to come to us. John's program is still voluntary. Okay, technically still voluntary. He has 100% commitment from all the firefighters. It's voluntary. Okay, that's how much hard work he's put in there. Okay, next example here is a very good friend of mine, Becky Livingston. She is a U.S. Forest Service, Southwest Region, Fire and Aviation Management staff. We always tease her about how long her title is. It's a really nice long one here. But she's been a wildland firefighter for numerous years here. We're going on about 25 kind of years. For those of you not familiar with wildland firefighters, there's lots of different areas. A hotshot, hotshots might be the folks that actually dig out fire lines within about a mile of the fire itself. Your smoke jumpers, they're the ones that kind of get a parachute down into the trauma area and try and, like the last line of defense for kind of getting people out or saving a house, and then literally have to kind of jump through the smoke to kind of get out. Then you've also got your engine crews and your other fire crews too that do numerous responsibilities. Well, Becky's quite interesting because unlike John, she was actually in the fire service. John was a civilian. Okay, he's never been a firefighter. Okay, Becky, however, has been a firefighter, but also during that firefighting work that she did during the summer season, she pursued undergrad degree in athletic training and exercise science, so had a very good understanding of the exercise science field. Well, now she got tapped and also pursued herself being the fitness coordinator within her wildland fire unit. So you guys can kind of see some of the things that she has done. We're seeing a lot of the same things as John. She got certifications in the area, she got experience, and is currently serving as an adjunct professor at New Mexico Community College, down obviously in New Mexico. Okay, so for those of you who might be firefighters or in the law enforcement or military fields right now, there are a lot of opportunities for you to be the active fitness professional working with your department. Okay, and quite like this little quote from Becky when I asked her kind of about being in this field. She recommended, okay, if I were looking for a prospect, I would look at their ability to do the job, their experience, okay, experience is huge, having participated in the field, their passion, education, and ability to be a strong leader, okay, absolutely huge there. So some of the experiences you might be getting right now, training, working in the field, as long as you're becoming kind of a good leader there and working on your managerial and communication skills, those are all qualities that are looked for. Okay, so let's kind of switch gears here and look at law enforcement. So a couple of case studies here. Another good friend, Kevin Chimento. He is the health and fitness instructor at the FBI Academy down in Virginia. Okay, now Kevin's kind of a pathway is quite an interesting one. He also is a civilian kind of working in this field. He began his career, undergrad degree in exercise physiology. He actually specialized in cardiac rehab, which many of you guys know is a big field to go into from exercise science. And after he graduated, he then began working per diem as a exercise physiologist, cardiologist at St. Francis Hospital in New York. Now, he was working per diem there, getting some good experience, clinical setting, so working with the cardiologist, working in a rehab setting for those who've had heart issues. And he was like, I want to do something else that really helps individuals, get fit, especially those who might be at risk for certain very stressful experiences. So at the time, his uncle was actually an FBI agent down in Virginia, and he had been asked to help try and find, he was on the recruitment board for finding a fitness coordinator to come and work at the FBI Academy. So knowing that Kevin had got some experience working with individuals doing fitness programming, as well as special populations who've had any type of heart issues, okay, he called him up, and Kevin came down, interviewed, and the interview process was a very interesting one. And I think this kind of interview process itself is a really good take-home point. Kevin, although he is not training to be an FBI agent, still had to go through a physical fitness test. Okay, still had to go through a physical fitness test to do this job. Okay, so that whole kind of statement, you don't have to be a good player to be a good coach, that doesn't pertain here. You do have to know how to lift, how to move, and be relatively, a little bit fitter, typically, to be able to do this job. So he had to do a physical fitness test. He also had to do a swim test and have a panel interview. Okay, so part of that panel interview was also writing out a program for a group of potential law enforcement officers. Okay, so you guys kind of seeing some themes here, right? You're going to be held to actually writing a program on the spot for those individuals. Okay, and a lot of that comes down to the unpredictability of many of these jobs. You don't know always how many individuals you're going to have in your group training. Okay, so his particular job, he got the job. He is the health and fitness instructor at the FBI Academy. What was quite interesting here, that I think is another good take-home point, is that initially his responsibilities were primarily conducting group classes and also training, new agents coming in. Okay, that's what his initial job responsibilities were. Okay, there was little when he first came in, which was a new position, by the way. Okay, he came into a new position. There was little potential for career advancement. So what he did, he kind of took it on his own accord and went back to school, and I don't have it up here, but he got his master's in exercise physiology at the University of Virginia. So that meant now, he got his master's actually in education, at University of Virginia. So he could now come back in and educate these guys a little bit more on healthful behaviors. So you guys see kind of the classroom instructions on health, fitness, nutrition, and stress management. He went back to school to get his master's so that he could build on that job responsibility there, okay? So time kind of went by, and within the last 3 years, his job responsibilities have expanded even more, obviously, as has his pay, which was another good motivating factor for doing that job. He creates newsletters, and he's also very much responsible for helping FBI agents who have been out on injury or sick leave get back in the game, literally, okay? So he uses education to help keep him further, and he's still actually teaching at the University of Virginia as an adjunct professor now too, okay? Okay, so big thing that Kevin recommends here is continuing education. Okay, yearly attendance at conferences, continuing that development as a professional in the field, not just kind of stopping once you get the position. Because for him at least, there was a lot of opportunity for career advancement and really helping develop that comprehensive wellness program with the continuing education that he actually pursued. Okay, next example of law enforcement here is a very nice lady, Kelly Kennedy. She is down in Miami. Her position is the Wellness Program Facility Manager for Miami-Dade Police Department. Okay, now, Kelly actually had a little bit of a similar approach to this position as I did mine. She's actually an academic, so during her PhD down in Florida, she was asked by the local police department to come in and help with their fitness programming. Okay, they weren't having much success. There was a little bit of disagreement on what type of training they should do and so on and so forth. So Kelly jumped right in on the opportunity, initially starting as a program coordinator, and then developed into the subject matter expert, for the Florida Department for Law Enforcement. Crikey, imagine how big that is, okay? How many folks she's now actually working with. So she got her certifications, degrees, obviously things we've seen with the other folks here, and it was just through that opportunity that she had as an assistant at Florida that got her in with Miami Police Department, and that led obviously to her now getting this position. Okay, so one kind of key thing I mentioned here with Kelly that hopefully you're noticing with some of the other folks I've talked about is it's all about getting your foot in the door. Okay, if you can get your foot in the door, then prove your worth. Okay, then there is a great opportunity for career development and really making a difference. Okay, really making a difference. So you see some of the things that she is still doing with these guys, lecturing, program development, and then also development of other resources that help these individuals continue their training, whether they are at the academy, what department they're in, and so forth, such as the development of apps. Okay, and I highly recommend that when you guys get a chance today, check out some of the apps and website that she's got, the fit2enforce.com, and also the I Eat Burn. Okay, that's quite an interesting one. That's a very general one, not so much law enforcement. Okay. But the key thing is she has evolved her application to law enforcement through the education that she's actually pursued. And what Kelly has to say is actually quite similar to what John mentioned regarding firefighters. She recommends getting to know your population, and she found this out a little bit the hard way. She went in very humble, but still had a lot of kickback. And one of the primary reasons why she had some of the kickback she did is she did not always have the investment of the department chief. Okay, so the higher up wasn't always there to kind of, oh yeah, go ahead, just do kind of your training. Wasn't there to say, okay guys, Kelly's in, let's kind of get to work here. Okay, so that's one of the big recommendations I know I would make that I definitely made an effort to do is get buy-in from the high ups, because they're going to be the role models. They're going to be the people that all of your department is looking to. Okay, so pertinent to fitness enforcement, including strength and conditioning professionals and law enforcement. So pretty key recommendation there. Okay, switch gears again for the last time here. We look a little bit at the military. I've got a couple of great case studies for you guys here. The first one of these is an awesome person called Tony Soika. And I do have to kind of correct a little bit here. He unfortunately is not our TSAC program coordinator. He had some commitments he had to still fulfill for the military. So he is still at the position in the parentheses there. Okay, so he is our company commander, Army Training Center in South Carolina. Now, Tony kind of found the military and strength and conditioning somewhat at the same time. He initially enrolled in the Army coming out of high school, but during one of his first leaves from the Army, kind of went back to school and got his undergrad in exercise science. Okay, now that was a little bit earlier, kind of 2000, something like that. Came back, and during that first leave, he got his undergrad and also began working as a strength and conditioning coach, actually as an assistant, Division I strength and conditioning coach. So during that time, he also got a bunch of certs in the field. And soon after he kind of started working as a Division I coach, he also began his own strength and conditioning business. But as he kind of moved on in that field, he realized that he could be of big time use to the military, because having been in the military, he understood what the physical demands were of working as a individual in the military, but he also had a very thorough understanding of the science behind conditioning. So felt that he should really go back to the military, did so. Okay, and has since had numerous military assignments. Obviously, you guys can see those there. But because of his background in this field, he was selected by the military to actually serve as the U.S. Army Physical Fitness School professional who was in charge of designing the programs as well as the manual from which others would learn to actually administer strength and conditioning programs for the military. Now, he got this position because, as well as all of his other commitments, by the way, this isn't a full-time position, okay, this is something else he does in addition to his other military commitments, but he got that position because of all the experience he attained, okay, so he got the certifications, the experience, and so forth there, okay. He also got the education, which has allowed him to benefit this position in many ways, such as through writing, and also dissemination of research in the area and collaboration with other professionals. So a lot of key things there. So I quite like this quote, and I've got another one from Tony in just a second too. But this, I think, is a very important take-home message. Not all the positions in this particular field are going to be posted. Okay, you sometimes have to pursue them a little bit yourself. And that includes internships and practical experiences. We see those posted a lot for strength and conditioning positions at the collegiate and sometimes professional level, but within tactical populations, not so much. You may have to pursue those yourself. Okay, so that may mean calling up the fire department. Okay, that may mean taking internships, working with the Navy, with the Air Force, and so on and so forth to get your foot in. And then my last little case study here is one that's actually quite close to home. Erica Rilmoto was actually one of my first students that graduated from Hofstra University. I got to Hofstra in fall 2006. She graduated in spring 2007. Okay, and as part of her internship, she went to San Diego. Okay, so as part of her internship towards her degree, she went to San Diego and worked with the MWR program, okay, which is the Navy Morale, Welfare, and Recreation program over in San Diego. So with this particular position, she worked as one of the fitness coordinators and actually got in with the Float Aboard program, okay? So some of you may have heard of this. Anyone heard of this internship? Okay, a couple of you had. If you go back to that page where I had everything kind of listed out, there's a couple of different internship programs posted up on there. They're absolutely fantastic. They're typically 3-month programs, okay, so really good for kind of a summer kind of thing for students. And during that internship program, as you can kind of see here, she what's the word I want? She pursued really good opportunities to further develop her experience and knowledge with working with this population. So she volunteered for a 10-day Fit Boss program. Okay, that actually took her over to Japan. Okay, so took her over to Japan. Okay, following that experience, they asked her to come on with the program paid full-time. Okay, she did such a good thing with the program there. So she absolutely loved it because she got to travel the world. Okay, absolutely fantastic experience. But during that during that experience, the key thing that she mentioned she did that really, really put her above the other individuals is the networking that she did. And she wasn't afraid to kind of put herself out there, teaching perhaps things that she had previously not taught. Like, for example, she took on a yoga stretching program. Okay, now obviously nowadays you have to kind of be certified for that, but she learned how to do that so she could administer that program. So she networked with a lot of folks, and she took on experiences and opportunities that, you know, previously may have made her feel a little bit uncomfortable, but she learned how to do it, got comfortable, and got proficient. So she was hired as a fitness coordinator and a waterfront fitness specialist, and as a result of those particular responsibilities, was actually asked, given her understanding of conditioning with these populations, was asked to come on as a research coordinator. So has actually conducted a bunch of research with, I believe, University of Wisconsin somewhere, don't quote me on that, looking at the NOS program, okay, which you guys can actually find that. Some of you may be familiar with that. You can find that online. But she was one of the folks that did research to really try and evaluate its effectiveness. Great stuff. So coming full circle, Erica now actually lives in Washington, D.C., and is responsible for overseeing personnel and hiring individuals for the same position she actually started in. Okay, so full-time position in D.C., working for the Navy. Okay, absolutely awesome. So she got this position straight out of her undergrad because of the internships that she actually did. Okay. Now I will say, having known Erica, that during her education, she was always the first person to volunteer if we ever needed help with research. She was the first person to volunteer if we needed help with assessing athletes and so on and so forth. And so she got, not saying it was my recommendation that got her that, but she got a great letter of recommendation from a bunch of us. Okay, absolutely awesome. Okay, so I quite like this quote that Erica gave me. Getting your foot in the door means starting from the ground up. Okay, so we know that volunteer internships are awesome, but it sometimes is frustrating not to get paid, but it is very, 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 very much worth putting the effort in. Okay, if you do a good job, you show enthusiasm, you don't complain when you got to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning, or if they don't allow you to go and get breakfast when there's a group in at 9, you know, all of that fun stuff, then you've got a good chance of having that internship really work in your favor. So kind of looking at these case studies whole, you guys see that there's a lot of reoccurring themes, a lot of those things from really the first slide, kind of the networking, the experience, the internships, and so forth. But in each of these individuals, there's also a very high level of passion, of enthusiasm for helping individuals within these particular disciplines. And kind of looking around the room, there's a lot of you in here. I'd be very surprised if you guys don't have the same passion. You won't be up at 7:30 in the morning listening to me talk about this if you didn't have the passion and drive to possibly work with these guys. And that's a big, big thing, okay? The enthusiasm and dedication for their own professional growth, even once they get the position, is also what helped them keep the position and keep being of benefit to the groups they were working with. Okay, so looking for those opportunities, absolutely huge, which obviously we hope you guys are all doing anyway. A well-rounded level of experience. This is big, okay, absolutely well-rounded. Have you worked with individuals? Have you worked with groups? Okay, have you worked with different sports? Okay, have you worked with different age individuals, different levels of fitness? Because if you take, let's say, obviously a fire department here, because it's who I'm most familiar with, you could have individuals in that fire department with a VO2 max of 35, and you could have some with a VO2 max of 60. Okay, are you going to do the same training program with them? Probably not, depending upon what their training goals are. If that person with a VO2 max of 60 milliliters kilogram per minute wants to maintain, yeah, maybe you can have them doing sub-max endurance training for sure. Okay, that person with 35 milliliters kilogram per minute, a little bit of sub-max, yeah, might further improve it a little bit, but then we're going to look to progress them to perhaps some interval training and so forth there. Do we know how to do that? Are we going to apply the same program to everybody? No, okay, no, absolutely not. Okay, you're not going to be able to do that. Okay, the big thing with this field, when I was at the TSAC conference, one great kind of analogy came up. Okay, if you're looking to work with 12 different individuals in a fire department, okay, you're probably going to have 12 different programs, which means you need to be trained to do, well, maybe not quite 12, but at least kind of 6 or 7. Okay, you need to know how to put a program together for individuals of different capabilities. Okay, and that requires training. Okay, that is not an online cert qualification right there. And the analogy kind of comes there. If I was coming into the fire department, if I go on a 2-week training course, how am I going to know how to train 7 different fire scenarios? Okay, it's not 2 weeks isn't going to get it done. Okay, so you need to be competently trained to cope with that stress. Okay. One of the big themes also that should be coming up here is perseverance. Okay, don't don't be kind of dismayed if you don't get initial enthusiastic feedback from the folks you're working with regarding the program you're putting in, okay? Perseverance there, okay? Getting to know your population, getting to know what they want and why they want that, okay? That's a big part, okay? So I'll kind of finish with this quote. It's another actual quote from Tony. I quite like this one as a little bit of a take-home message. The Army needs someone who understands the science behind human performance as well as understands soldiering. A lot of people know one or the other. Okay? A lot of people are in the Army and really into working out. It's not the same. The Army needs strength and conditioning professionals, period. No excuses. I wanted to help bring about that change. Okay, and that's why he got involved there. And I think with all of the case studies and with many other folks I know, we can apply that same take-home message and why they got into this field for law enforcement and fire too. heard of folks limiting the use of things like supplements when they're actually in the fire department gym, you know, that type of thing too. So they might do it outside, but not right there visible to everybody else, you know? Okay, good. Any other questions or comments, folks? We all good there? Okay. If you would like to email me or ask any more questions, either about actually getting into the field or about the TSAC program here or the TSAC SIG, then please, please, please don't hesitate to do so. Even if you want to just pop me an email through introducing yourself so I can contact you down the road if we do have anything come up, please, please, please go ahead and do so, folks, all right? So jot down the email. You can find me at Hofstra anyway. All right, guys? Take care. Have a good rest of the conference.